All right, good evening. Again, this is Banti. That's Madaku. I have with us tonight Bill, as always. Bill Eggett. He's been doing a podcast with me along with Kelsey every weekend, and Bill has been a strong supporter of, you know, advocating for children and dads as well. And we have our guest tonight, Donald Adams, from Jacksonville, Florida. Don, I'll call him Don for short. He's behind the organization called Finding Fathers Incorporated. And his mission, I'll let him talk more about it as we go along. But Don, has developed a passion to connect children with their dads and vice versa. And Don, I truly appreciate what you are doing. We live in a society where many children are being deprived of their fathers. Every father matters, and every child needs a father. We can't steal that away from our children. So I truly appreciate what you're doing, and I appreciate your time with us tonight.
Well,
Um,
thanks, Ben and Bill, for having me, and look forward to us, kind of talking about some of these issues and finding some solutions to this fatherless epidemic that we're living through.
right. So Don, tell me, how did you get involved in this movement? What was um, you know the drive behind Finding Fathers? How did it all start?
Well, it takes me back to my childhood years.
Hmm.
As a teenager growing up in Chicago, my parents had gone through a divorce, and that was the reason and the cause for me to have absence from
Hmm.
to having a father in my life.
Hmm.
And during those teenage years, I went through a lot of the adverse and negative effects that fatherless kids go through every day, whether it was lack of educational achievement, uh, gang affiliation, drug and alcohol abuse. There's so many different things that I went through,
Hmm.
and it's
Hmm.
plagued me throughout my life. So while I was growing up, I went to those groups to hopefully find those father figures, but that was terribly hard, especially in the streets of Chicago, Illinois. So I end up, getting into a lot of the bad groups and the bad crowds. Now, as I got older, I sought out a relationship with my father. I said I have to just find a good relationship with my dad so I can learn a little bit more like about myself,
Hmm.
and then how I could better have a family from the examples that I've had. So I did find that good relationship with my dad, and once I did that, it made me become more responsible to be in the lives of my children. Again, when I was growing up, I went through a lot of these negative areas, such as early sexual activity, teen pregnancy. So I ended up having children at an early age, also, and I'm starting to see that the same cycle is, persistent. Like my children have been estranged from me for some time because of my decisions and irresponsibilities, and not even maturing enough yet. So it's a continuous cycle, and I saw this as I was trying to reach out and be a part of my children's lives, and I said, I got to do something about this. Like, not only is it affecting me, it's affecting generations older than I, younger than myself, and it's even affecting and impacting my own children. So I had to do something to bring light to this situation. And of course, there's gentlemen like yourselves and organizations like Dads Matter too that is trying to bring light to these situations. But it's an ongoing cycle, and we're all in this fight together. We have to work together as a family within our communities in order to fix these problems. So again, I seen that it was a cycle, and I wanted to do something that can fix my life situation, give me the ability to be a part of my kids' lives and help them have better outcomes in life. So me going through the family court systems and trying to gain those parental rights to be with my kids is what led me to create and Finding Fathers Inc., which is a nonprofit 501c3 community association and public charity, and we're created to, try to fight against the fatherless epidemic and create a community of support and a family for the fatherless. So just starting off, most of the reason that I created the organization was to give a family for those who have been somewhat left by the wayside, because we all know that, you know, children are fatherless due to a lot of different reasons, whether it be parent alienation or abandonment. And those aren't some of the main ones that are looked at statistically, such as divorce and out of wedlock births. But there's things like sudden death, incarceration, deployment. These things keep children fatherless. So rather than just help fathers get parental rights for their children, I figured it was important for us to recognize and create more support for these fatherless kids in these situations, because it's no piece of cake for them whatsoever.
Mhm. No, there was something that you touched on about, falling into the bad groups or falling into the bad crowds. You know, I hear these stories a lot, and I'm so glad that you are on. You've had a first-hand experience, to having fallen into a bad group as you were growing up, without your dad, not active in your lives. Can you share with us what the experience is like? Being in a bad group because a father figure was absent.
Yes, absolutely. Those first part I mentioned was the gangs and gang affiliation. So, growing up in Chicago, Illinois, if you've read any of the news, it's a
Yeah,
pretty rough place to live.
yeah.
All right. So when with dad not around and keeping me, guided and strengthened and showing me that leadership to be outside of those groups. I fell into them immediately. And then the things that I started to like as a teenager, they were all centered around my peer groups and my friends and things of that nature. But all of my friends, they were all outside with me, and none of us really had a father figure around. It was a bunch of guys hanging out, and we're doing all the things that we're not supposed to be doing. But that was a rough time. I had to learn a lot about, critical thinking and what will I do in this situation. It was just so much that if I had a father guiding me and leading me during those times periods, I would have, probably bypassed a lot of the nonsense. So I was affiliated with gangs. I was doing a lot of criminal activity. I had violent behavior issues. I mean, there was, again, just about every negative aspect of being fatherless plagued me in my young life, from jail incarceration to lack of educational achievement. I was expelled from high school for fighting. All these things are what fatherless kids are facing regularly. So, it's definitely rough in your environment, let alone your home. You're supposed to have both parents there, nurturing you and nourishing you in your life and guiding you. But without one of those, you'll easily can fall into any of these traps that are out there to keep you from being the person that you want to be. And our kids are going through that, whether they're teenagers or adolescents. Even when a child is still in the womb and in the belly, it's important for a father and a father figure to be a part of that woman's life so that that child can get nourished all the way
Mm.
throughout their lives. So, during those times where I was without my father, I easily fell into the trap of what's going on TV, what's happening out in the streets in the world. And most of all of it was negative. So that was a rough time for me. I made a lot of bad decisions that are still plaguing me right now today.
Wow. Bill.
Yeah, Warren Farrell wrote a book called The Boy Crisis
Yeah, yeah.
on this situation in the United States, and you're correct. It's not only is parental alienation one of the factors for children growing up without a father, but as you said, incarceration or their parents being jailed. or specifically fathers, as outlined in this book. There's a very high rate of children who grow up in fatherless homes who end up themselves in jail and perpetuating this negative cycle, as you've outlined. It's it's amazing that you have overcome this and are trying to be a role model to all children, men, boys, or whoever that needs the help, to try and be a good role model and be a good person, and be positive in society. So I like to commend you for that. That's hard to do without the guidance, and for you to have done that is truly amazing. Thank you for coming on and being so honest with your own experience in this. So.
Oh yeah, thanks again. And without God and all of the blessings that have come my way, I probably wouldn't be this man today. I feel that this is a part of my life's purpose, and it may be a part of the purpose of life for the entire world, to look at this fatherless epidemic as a situation that is plaguing our communities. It's the most important social issue that we're dealing with right now today. And there are a lot of great stories of children who are fatherless, who have overcome some of the, negative stereotypes and statistics to do things great for not just themselves, but for the community as well, and for the society as a whole. We look to create more awareness and support for families that have been negatively impacted by the fatherless epidemic. So I decided that we need a national day for fatherless children. So the fourth Sunday each calendar year in the month of June is now designated as Fatherless Children's Day, where Father's Day Sunday is the third Sunday. So that next Sunday is going to be Fatherless Children's Day Sunday. And not only do we want to create more awareness and support, but we want to celebrate these champions that have turned tragedy into triumph and become successful members and leaders in our community and society.
That's great. That's amazing. I wasn't aware of that day, and thank you for sharing that with us.
Oh, nothing to it. If you could just Google National Fatherless Children's Day, Finding Fathers Inc. We created the day. If you're looking for ways to support, you can reach us on findingfathersinc.org, or any of the social media sites. You'll usually search Finding Fathers Inc. and find us. But this is maybe the third Fatherless Children's Day this year. And of course, the whole world doesn't know yet. So thank you so much for allowing me to come to Toronto, Canada, and share the good news about Fatherless Children's Day and our efforts to bring more awareness and support to families negatively affected by this fatherless epidemic. I mean, it's rough, really it is.
Mhm. Yeah, and Bill, I picked up about a month ago. I picked up the Boy Crosses book. That um, quite an interesting book, and it's very well written. And it's got a lot of materials in there. A lot of materials. I know it's in Florida right now. Doing a program. Too bad it's not coming to Toronto, but at some point I hope that we'll have it here. But
Absolutely.
yeah, but don't something that one of the things that I think we always undermine. We hear about uh, a lot of kids growing up, without fathers in their lives, ending up in prison, right, being incarcerated, um, and oftentimes we sort of undermine it in the sense that we don't really understand the triggers or why some of these children end up behind bars. And you've dealt with that situation. I'm sure you know quite a few, young people that have been through that process as well. Can you educate us? What are some of the triggers? Why do children end up in prison? Like what is behind it? I know sometimes they are traumatized, and they struggle with anger and a whole lot of issues that they run into. But I mean, having that first hand experience, are you able to bring us up to speed on some of the triggers that really leads them into prison?
Absolutely. There's this debate of nature versus nurture. Your parents and genes and family versus the environment that you're living in. Well, from looking at a general, the world in general, a lot of homes have become fatherless, and these effects, uh, they they continue on in such a cycle to where, let's just say you are in a community that is in this poverty cycle. There's 10 different families on the block. Well, you've got six of these families with no father in the home. So, you got kids going out and they're misguided. But when they go out and hang out with friends, they're being led to doing some of the wrong things, not knowing the consequences, not being told of these consequences and how serious it could be. To just one minute the kid, could be a teenage kid, they're thinking, oh, just vandalizing this or doing that is not such a big deal, but they can have long-term effects on you. So what I see in these poverty cycles is just that. I see poverty. That's a lot of the reason why we need fathers in homes to bring in that income. That extra income in a home takes you out of that poverty cycle, and then you're not affected as much by the environment. So I see that the environment is playing a major role in what we do. Back in early 2000s, there was this big thing about Grand Theft Auto and the violence that some of these video games can have the person, starting to exhibit violent behavior. And it's statistics about this. So our our families are not being strengthened and fortified in great family values, religious values, things of that nature. But then again, different cultures have different ways that they raise their children and so on and so forth. But from my experience personally, the recidivism rates where people, they're doing the wrong things and getting caught up in the wrong systems, the penal system, incarceration. Once you get in there, it's not really a lot of rehabilitation that's taking place. It's more just survival. So when you come out of there, you're still thinking survival without maybe some of the guidance and leadership that you should be having from that father figure. So let's say you're, a teenager, a young teenager, and there's no dad around to guide you to do the right things, and you get into these groups, gangs, and drugs and criminal activity, criminal behavior. Once it starts, it's hard to stop it. You got to put your foot on the brakes and try to stop this problem. And a lot of us don't see it as a problem. I'm 43 years old now, and some of the things that I did when I was a teenager are still plaguing me. So it's a terribly rough cycle, and we've got to find ways to break it. Putting more fathers in the home and strengthening our values in the home before our children go outside the home, that kind of helps protect us. But the environment is very rough in our society.
Yeah. Now, the fatherlessness and parental alienation are two separate issues. From my experience, parental alienation happens almost equally 50-50 to women as it does to men. While fatherlessness and growing up with a single mother is in North America almost the norm in most cases. And when this is due to parental alienation, having a child being raised by someone with a personality disorder, such as narcissistic borderline personality disorder, will generally tend to have that child grow up with those personality traits and possibly end up following the same cycle and developing the same personality disorders, because this is where these disorders develop, is unresolved childhood issues. I remember watching the Isaiah Thomas story where he had grown up without a father in poverty, and the real message behind that story was his mother. He had someone where he learned values from at the home, and that kept him on a good path instead of falling to the streets and becoming involved with gangs and criminal behaviors. He worked very hard because his mother was there to support him and was very supportive of him. And he ended up turning out to, becoming a great basketball player and had a very successful life. And it was a very good movie. It's been a number of years since I've seen it, and it's been a while since he's played. But you're right. People can grow up in adversity in these situations and still be positive. And I think for that to happen, they need to have a positive influence in their home. And without that positive influence, that's when it's easier to be susceptible to gangs or criminal behaviors and following the wrong path.
Yes, absolutely. Speaking of that, I was thinking about one of my children I'm being alienated from. It's a daughter of mine, and I had a brief relationship with her mom, and I remember her telling me a story about how her mom kept her away from spending time with her dad for quite some time. And then he passed away. So that probably left her wanting that relationship, but never can get it. All right. It comes to find out, well, once time passes along, she is actually doing the same thing that her mother did. So these cycles, they got to be broken. If we can pinpoint the problem in our own lives and find a way to fix that with, creating parents inequality, a positive co-parenting environment, even mediation if need be, then we can start to break some of these cycles. But
Yes.
it's the children that's suffering mostly when these situations arise. And, I had a pretty good support system at home. My mom was great, always there every day. But because of the cycle, the poverty cycle that we were in, she continuously worked and
Yes.
worked and worked and worked and got a little chance to spend time at home other than, coming home from work. And again, she was a great support system, lover. My dad also, love him, got into a relationship with him. He's been supportive even up until this day. He does fatherly stuff with me. But having that support system is key. And if we can have a whole community of support, the whole it takes a village to raise a child situation,
Yes.
then our children are protected within that community of support. They're getting the accolades, they're going out and giving it their all because they got people rooting for them. So it's very important to have that support system in the home and in the community.
Yeah.
My mom, we went to church, and before my parents divorced, we were going to church before they divorced. And then after they divorced and split, we were still, me and my mom, we were still going to church. And there were father figures there also in the church. Now, did I look at them as father figures at that time? No, because I'm still, very young in life, and I wasn't necessarily looking to have that leadership and guidance. But those people were there in our community to for us to be supported. Just like you'll see a bunch of kids hanging outside, and then the ice cream man comes up the block, and then there's at least one father that comes out and get these kids ice cream. So we have to continuously create this support system and be that leader and father figure, even to kids that aren't ours, because they are in our community, meaning that they are in our society. So the more of us that stand up and help them and guide them, we have a better society.
I agree. I remember a post from a school in Texas where they had, it was in a low income area, and a lot of the children who attended the school didn't have fathers. So they put out an email or sent letters home with the children asking for any fathers who were available or any men who could come in and do activities with the children on Father's Day. And they had an overwhelming response. There was hundreds of men that showed up to be supportive and be there to help the children and help them conduct activities together for Father's Day. So that was really great. I'd like to find that one again. I saved it a number of years ago. I think it's about 4 years ago, but it was a school in Texas, and it was just so touching to see that all these people who came out, all these fathers who came out to try and support the children at school, and not even children they knew. That's just their community. Like you said, having a community to raise a child, it's really needed. It helps. It's not needed, but it definitely does help.
Yeah, and it's a beautiful thing, when you see fathers, standing up being father figures for, any child.
Yeah,
It's worth it to give a child a pat on the back for a job well done,
yeah,
even if it's not your child. We have to understand that our community is much bigger than just our family or our situation. So we have to fix things for everyone so we can all enjoy the community.
Mhm. Yeah, and in Canada, Bill, I think we have this program that's called Big Brothers, right?
yes,
In most of these high schools, they have the Big Brother programs that you can voluntarily walk in and ask if that you want to be part of this program. So if there's a child that is deprived of a father or needs somebody to talk to, like a father figure to sort of hang out with, or to pour out their emotions on. I mean, they can connect a child, with this father. It doesn't necessarily have to be a father, but any man can actually go in there and be part of this program. And believe me, there are a lot of children that needs needs this oversight. Needs a male figure in their lives. It's just the impact that it has on their development, both emotional and mental. It's huge. It's so huge. But don't you had said something about growing up with your mom, and a lot of the time, she was working,
yeah,
right? And that literally left you home by yourself, I guess.
Hmm.
So most of the time, my thinking is we're basically growing up on your own or raising yourself, if I may, if it's right for me to say that. And there are a lot of kids going through that. A lot of these alienating parents will leave their children at home by themselves. Sometimes children that cannot are not supposed to be home by themselves are left home, basically to fend for themselves. Whilst a father is available and ready, to take on these kids whilst the mom is working. But out of ignorance and selfishness, they'll rather allow these children to be on their own to raise themselves, as opposed to having a father figure or an influential person in their lives. How did they feel? How did they feel being on your own a lot of the time when your mom was at work?
It well, as much as I love my mom, I did wrong by her also. There was things that I wouldn't share. There were truths and activities that I wouldn't share with my mom. So I love her. And, you always want to say, hey, I did everything right by my mom. I did not tell her the things that were going on for her to help me. You know what I mean? Like, if I would have told her, hey, mom, I'm involved with a gang, I got guns and drugs over here in the closet, you know, it wouldn't have went well. But that's what we need. We need to have that honesty with ourselves and our families and our friends and anyone that's in our community with us. That honesty and respect is a big thing. So, as much as I love my mom, I couldn't tell her about what was going on in my life. And that kind of, uh, that probably held me back. I would say it probably held me back. Had I had that guidance and that nourishment from my father and father figure to be a man about what I'm doing, then those situations might have come out different. But having a lack of that guidance from the father and father figure, it can lead you down some rough roads. So during those times where she was being supportive, she was only supporting the things that I would give her knowledge about. You know,
of
and
course.
yeah, I know, right? We got to share the honest parts of what we're doing so that they can help us not fall into those traps. Uh,
Right.
I'll use an example as early sexual activity. It wasn't really a thing that was on my mind when I was younger, when I first became fatherless around 13 years old. Heck, relationships in general weren't even on my radar, but I didn't have anyone talking to me about it either. If I was going out into the community or the neighborhood, I probably talk about it with homeboys and stuff like that. But the person I should have been talking about it with was my mother and father. those where I was supposed to learn those lessons. So that early sexual activity that I was never honest about led to out of wedlock childbirth, and then the cycle continues. So we have to be honest with the people in our family and our community, and communicate the right messages so that we can hold ourselves accountable for what it is that we are doing, and then use our energy for the right purposes.
Yeah, and I like that word you used, accountable. There's such a lack of accountability within our system today. It's I'm offended by this, so it's not my fault. Or people just want to lay off blame for whatever reason they can think up, and it's very sad.
Mhm.
It's it's not acceptable. Certain things are not acceptable, and you have to learn that. And that's what I believe is the role of a father, is to, teach our children that, we love them, we want to see them happy, but at the same time, we have to let them know what is and what is not acceptable in society as a behavior, and we have to be firm and let them know that these behaviors are not acceptable and it will not be tolerated. There are there is accountability for people who do not follow the rules, and I see our entire society just stepping away from all accountability, trying to blame everything and everyone else.
Yeah.
And I really like that word, how you describe that.
Yeah, we need to be as honest as we can about our situations, regardless of how gruesome it may sound or look. If we're being honest, I think people are afraid of getting dirty, getting their hands dirty, showing that they're dirty and stuff like that. Like, I just, as just being myself, knowing that I'm going to be, some type of leader or role model to others, I have to do what's morally right when the lights and the cameras are on or off,
Yep.
and that helps me to be a better example for other fathers, other father figures, even women. Our fatherless community is one led by single mothers. So, I always try to keep open arms for the women that are taking care of our children, and provide them the protection that they, desperately need. And, to just be that father, be that man in their lives that can, bring about some positive change.
So don't I mean, based on your experience, there are situations where by some dads truly don't want to be there. They don't want to be available for their children.
Yeah.
And then there are situations where, I mean, this uh, these days I hear more men wanting to be active in the lives of their children, right? And there are some that really don't care. They just want to, move on with their lives. But majority of men that I've been talking to are very passionate
Yeah.
to be fathers. From your own experience and what you are doing in your community, what's the gap between those that are ready and willing to be there, that the system basically denies them that opportunity, versus those that truly don't care, and want to just move on with their lives?
I'm glad you did ask that, because I have been in family court for the last 3 to 4 years fighting to be a part of my children's lives the right way. And I am being met with resistance by the mothers and by family court. Law enforcement does not enforce the rules and the laws of family court, and this drags you down. Now, before I went to family court, I was that irresponsible parent and father. I could have even been seen as, well, I've been called deadbeat. And, I don't want to say that I've abandoned my children, but I did abandon the responsibilities of being a father, because I wasn't really taught how to be a father, boyfriend, husband, or things of that nature when I was younger and making these mistakes. So just looking at, you know, I know you're asking a question that's, I'm sorry, I got started to think about my own family situation, and I know that even though I'm being alienated away from these children, there's fathers who also don't show up and will abandon their kids. I have
Yeah.
a disabled son who's got cerebral palsy, and I've been back and forth with him to schools. I show up to the school and I'm probably the only father there. But there's several children that have special needs and are disabled and, intellectually challenged that fathers are leaving by the wayside. And it really hurts me that you wouldn't be by the side of the child and even the mother in these situations. So, yes, there is a passion for fathers that have been alienated. We do really yearn to be able to be a father. It makes us so happy, even if it's not our kids, to help raise children. But there are tons of fathers out here that do not want to step up to the plate. They won't pick up the bat and try to knock it out the park for their kids or any other kids. And that's where the cycle is so bad, because there's fathers, again, who really would love to be a part of their kids' lives, but they're getting this really hard time with family court and even with the mother of the child. But then there's fathers who totally abandon all responsibility of being a man, a father, a leader, and it hurts, which is why I continue on the way that I do, no matter what's going on from that next person. Hey, if I got to pull you up and then hold myself accountable and help lead the next person and raise the next child, I'm fine with that. Because if we take all the population of our men, and I like to look at history on this, when there's wars, mostly the men go out and do the fighting and the women are home taking care of the children. Well, when you think about life, if you don't have that father in the home, that home is defenseless. And our children are defenseless, and they're subject to all kind of things. So it makes me feel good to know that there are fathers who care. There are organizations full of fathers and men that care, and it really saddens me that there's fathers that do not associate being a father with their personality, with their everyday living. So I would like to challenge those fathers that are not enjoying all this beauty and love that you get from your children to just try it, rather than to abandon the responsibility of taking care of a life and being a leader and nourishing this person and helping them to reach their maximum potential.
I'm really glad that you brought up this issue as men as protectors in the home, and not only in the home but in the country.
Yes.
This is typically the male role, and has been the real male role throughout history. And for men to be labeled as deadbeats as a whole, I find very
Offensive.
upsetting. Yeah, offense. Thank you. I was trying to think, find the proper term that wasn't too bad, but offensive. That covers it very well. Um, there are many fathers, and I'm sure that I know from my experience in being part of the parental alienation community for the past number of years, that many fathers fight to be in their children's lives. Do you believe the courts support these fathers or actively work against them?
In my situation and circumstances, I do not think that the courts are supporting the fathers. Some of
I
a
agree.
lot of Yeah, a lot of the rules need to be changed. They started this stuff so long ago, and they just think that this one size fits all works for every family. It does not. I'm the petitioner in my court cases, and I petitioned the courts August 1st of 2019. I won full custody with one child, yet the mother is hiding the child and won't release the child to me. Even by court order, law enforcement is not enforcing the court orders that I give them. For so long, family court just does not seem to be on the child of the on the side of the father, nor are they doing what's in the best interest of the child,
I
because
agree.
they'll Yeah, they'll make these laws and won't enforce them. And then you're sitting here still waiting to get your kid one day and hopefully start the healing process. But family court doesn't help that person. I've got, again, 3 cases. 2 of them have gotten dismissed by the courts just because they didn't want to continue, and I don't get that. The other case, I've already won the custody. They won't finalize it. The woman has run off with the child. They're not helping me. I have cried. I started a whole support group, Fatherless Anonymous support group for fathers like ourselves to possibly find some good coping strategies to deal with these issues. Because while I'm using all of my time, energy, effort, and resources trying to get the spend time with the child is missing out on all of that. It's like a total waste of money, time, and everything because I still can't get the child nurtured the way he needs to be. So I don't feel that family court is looking out for fathers. Some of the rules need to change. Giving 100% custody to the mother at birth, I think that needs to change. Of course, child support. There's several things that needs to change, but I'm taking the stance that if I fix it myself, I won't have to ask anyone else to fix it for me. So that's what we're doing at Finding Fathers. We're trying to find ways to battle this fatherless epidemic because family court is not helping, unfortunately.
No, I find the courts are very ineffective. And again, they're moving and making decisions on the basis that all fathers are deadbeats. And that's discrimination. It's discriminatory how they treat fathers in courts. And
I
if you
agree.
look at this, if you look at the statistics on suicide, um, it's overwhelmingly high related to family court cases. And I believe it's in part, a friend of mine is doing some research on this, about PTSD, and it's same with veterans who might suffer from PTSD from what they've been through. Um, PTSD alone is not usually what causes people to commit suicide. It's PTSD with moral injury, is how he's termed it and what he's read. Moral injury is you have a belief that if you go to court and you present your evidence and you're a good father and you're a good person, you go and tell the truth, that you're going to be a part of your child's life. When really that rarely happens.
Yeah.
And that's the moral injury in conjunction with the PTSD that lead people to commit suicide. Same with, as I said, veterans who have gone to war to fight for their country, only to come back to their country and then be overlooked
Yeah.
for what they've done to try and protect our rights and our way of life. And I find that offensive as well. These people that will go and put their lives on the line to protect how we live and our way of living here in North America, both Canada, US, we have, relative to many other countries in the world, we have a very good life. And not everyone is willing to step up and try to protect everyone's rights so everyone else can live with the comforts we have. And it's a shame more people don't support these people when they come back.
Yeah.
This is true, and not just from deployment and the PTSD. It can be a system where we create the change that we need to see in the world. And it does need to be more men like us that are creating this change. Unfortunately, we don't have the resources that some of the other people that aren't creating the change have. And I try to put myself in the shoes of someone that say is a billionaire. Well, if I was a billionaire, what causes would I support and things of that nature? I think this is the most important is family.
Yes.
Fatherhood is a rough thing. Parenthood is rough, but we've got to try to work together and fix it. But I think that again, I started this support group, Fatherless Anonymous, so that I could dedicate time to anyone and everyone that might need a shoulder to cry on, a friend that understands it from their same perspective, a peer support group. because we're all living in this society together. Even if 2 to 3 houses on your block have, father and mother, there's that one or six others that don't. So, we're in this together.
Now, um, one thing that Bill and I've been doing, we've been talking to a lot of fathers. We've been talking to a lot of fathers, a lot of young adults, 18 plus, and one of the things that we ask is, would you vote on issues when it comes to election that promotes father presence, or promotes men's rights, basically making sure that dads are active and available, and those that are available, they are given the opportunity to be actively involved in their children's lives. Overwhelmingly, almost everybody says yes, they will vote in the next election. Meaning that, I mean, that's a whole chunk of voting block that historically men don't really vote in elections. But you know we are raising awareness. More people are developing interest. More people want to participate and vote for issues that concerns men and concerns men being given the opportunity to be actively involved in the lives of their children. How how is this playing out in the U.S.? I mean, from what you do, and then I'll have Bill also speak to that as well.
Well, it's important. I was doing a little bit of studies, and I believe it was sociology or social psychology, and they were talking about the importance of the breakdowns of different groups within the system of voting. And we've got, let's just speak on the fatherless community because that kind of involves all of us. If
Yeah.
we've got a bunch of children that are not being guided into, uh, let's say, knowledge of politics, knowledge of what your vote can do, or if you were the person getting that vote. Yeah, I don't think that we've stressed it enough in our communities growing up that politics is a way to help us fix some of the problems that we're dealing with. So if we have more fathers that are willing to do things as far as political and give that vote, cast that vote for the person who is going to work towards, protecting our families and our homes and the family court system. I'm all for that. Just like you said, there's plenty of people that would cast a vote to help bring an end to some of the problems that these fatherless homes and communities face. But I also want to add that we can do this on our own. We can put together groups in the community that can help protect those people in the community. Uh, or we can, have mediation between two parents so that the child can have a positive co-parenting environment. And that's what we want to see happen with Finding Fathers Inc. We want to provide uh, a vehicle to get to your destination without having to get into another vehicle or the public transportation, so to say. So, we want to try to fix some of these problems ourselves. Politics is important. It's on a global standpoint, it's very important. And we need to be more educated in our communities, especially the fatherless community, on what can help us out of the problems that we're in. The
And
system works to a degree.
Yeah.
it does. Um, I've done a little research on statistics of both USA and Canada for people that support equal shared parenting. And in the United States, 95% of the general population support equal shared parenting. And in Canada, it's 85%. Now, with numbers this high, it's hard to believe that no political party is coming forward and saying that we support this legislation to make equal shared parenting mandatory unless there is a valid reason to keep the parent away from the child.
Mhm.
So Kentucky has gone forward and moved ahead with shared parenting legislation, and in their first year, they cut down the number of family court cases by 50%. So
Awesome.
that's huge because more money flows through the family courts than all other courts combined in the world.
Mhm.
And in Canada, we have we have had the Conservative Party bring forward a bill to try to create equal shared parenting with a rebuttable presumption. What a rebuttable presumption means that if you can present evidence that this parent is not suitable or not fit to be a parent or be in their life full time, then you present that evidence and
Mhm.
we will look at this. Otherwise, are cases of
Shared.
divorce.
Yeah. Hmm.
The presumption is equal shared parenting. It's and this will negate a lot of the divorce tactics and things that are current that I see that are being currently used throughout the system, which are devastating. The court system, because of litigation like this, drains the family of all their funds and
Yeah.
resources. I went from having a home to with a good job to being homeless for a year, and there was
So I'm
times that
sorry.
I. Well, thank you. It's and we need people that go through this. We need to talk more about this so we understand because I have a good paying job and I had a good income, and there was days that I I just didn't have any gas to drive to work and get home. So I had to make a choice. Do I get gas and go to work, or do I make sure I have food for my kids and look after them? So
Tough choices.
there's
God.
very tough choices. And as a matter of fact, on Thursday at work, I just had a meeting with my employer in HR about my absences from work, and they put me on um, I forget the program it's called, but an attendance program that monitors my attendance and missed time at work. So it's definitely affected, being dragged into court, having being investigated by child protection, being arrested by the police, having all of these things happen to me repeatedly. And this began back in 2015 for me, and we're in 2023 now. And
Yeah.
during that time, I've been the subject of criminal investigations, investigations by child protection, investigations by the RCMP. I've been cleared of all investigations. I even had a criminal trial, found not guilty, and still I am being abused by the system. It's once they pick a side, because it's an adversarial system, they don't want to acknowledge they made a mistake and they want you to go away because they've already made a decision in this matter and they don't care to know the truth.
Hmm.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that. It's sad because I know that parent alienation can get that bad. I've been wrongfully incarcerated twice. I've had criminal investigations opened up on me. I've had the Department of Children and Family Services show up at my home several times over
Yeah.
false allegations that the alienating parent is allowed to make, and they'll investigate that, yet they'll close an investigation against the parent who's running away with the child. So it is disheartening to be like, how do I keep up this fight, when I'm not getting any justice? I feel that we got to take this into our own hands. I know that there's been groups of people that would like to go to City Hall and stand on the steps of Capitol Hill, I guess it is, and try to
Yeah.
change some of those laws. But from the comforts of our own home, we can change some of these situations ourselves. We can find ways to create that parents inequality and positive co-parenting environment. We can do the mediation and all the things that they do in court. We can even have contracts written up, but we've got to do it ourselves. We got to take it into our own hands, because asking the world to change the laws that the whole world is supposed to abide by, it's going to be like an insurmountable task. But creating our own little community of support for the fatherless, for the fathers that are hurting. And again, I go to this support group every week because it's hurtful. It's hard to carry on and fight for that child when all of your resources are being used to fight for the child. They're
Yes.
not they're not benefiting whatsoever. They're actually still being left by the wayside, and their best interests are never really looked at except by the parent who is fighting for them. So it's bad out here, but with more conversations and more alliances and more groups of men and fathers and mothers and grandfathers and the whole community, we can fix these issues ourselves.
Yeah.
It'll take some time, but it'll
It
take
will.
even longer if we're asking somebody else to fix them.
Yeah.
I agree.
Now, I mean, going back to Bill's stats that he was sharing on equal shared parenting. Um, I mean, I guess we have the votes, right? And if a political party comes up and openly endorses to pass the presumption of equal shared parenting, I think they will win overwhelmingly. Like like we hear from the people that we talk to, Bill, that they are willing to vote for any party that stands up for shared parenting.
Yes, there is a change happening in society, and look at let's just take the Budweiser, Anheuser-Busch, and
Yeah.
their latest marketing tactic to try and get support. It completely backfired on them.
Yeah.
I don't think it's gone well for them, and I believe they're pushing a minority agenda. Again, it's being driven by money.
Mm,
I don't think they really care one way or the other as long as they're making money. But someone again offered them money to be part of this group, and if you have these numbers and you support our agenda, then we'll give you money to support our agenda. And they fell into that trap of basically alienating their consumer base to get money to support
Hmm.
somebody else's agenda. Um, this is what I see with our politicians. Lobbyists, there are specifically two lobby groups that continue to lobby politicians against equal shared parenting, both in the United States and Canada. And those are bar associations, legal associations, because they get rich off of this.
mhm,
The more, the more money going through the family courts, the more money they all get. Everyone in court, except for the applicant and respondent, are being paid to be there. And they're basically taking the money from families and dividing them and putting the child, hanging them as a carrot, as a tool to get all the funds they can out of that family,
Yeah.
and then turn them away from the courts and say, we're done with you, we're not going to do anything, we've made our decisions, go away.
Yeah.
It's wrong, it's sad, and they are actively, whether they mean to or not, but they're actively breaking up families and creating division in families.
Yeah.
And we need our legislators to recognize this and step in and help people like you and I and Ben, like all of us.
yeah.
We are too small to be able to take on this system.
Right.
Mhm,
And the support is there, both in Canada and the United States, for equal shared parenting, yet it is still not happening here in Canada. It has happened in Kentucky, and I believe Ohio is in the process of creating legislation for equal shared parenting, and I believe 17 other states are in the process as well, because it has been so successful in Kentucky. And according to new studies and all the experts, even high conflict divorces, um, it's still in the best interest for children to see both their parents.
yeah.
There
Yeah.
has to be some means of communication between those parents, and they have some communication apps, Parent Wizard or
Family wizard. Yeah.
Family Wizard. Yes, that's the one, and where you cannot swear. So communications will be cleaned up between parties
Mhm,
before it's sent. So there are things like that that can help uh, when you have two parents who are basically warring in these divorce cases, so that the children aren't as exposed to as much of that. And that is a very toxic situation to expose children to. Children don't need to see that. And that's where they learn to hate. That's where they learn fear. And it's very negative. That's not the message we want to send to our children to help them grow up.
mhm, mhm. And I think Arkansas is one of the states also that has the shared parenting law in place as well.
Excellent.
I think they also have like one of the best models as
You
well.
could be right. I haven't been following it lately. I knew Kentucky did it. I knew they were very successful, and
Hmm.
17 other states were looking at it. And I don't know how close each one is. I heard Ohio was good, and maybe Arkansas did get that. I haven't been following that lately. I've been very
Hmm.
busy with a lot of other research and things like this. We're trying to raise awareness and do the podcast, and
Yeah.
create awareness about these situations. So
Yeah. Well,
You know,
our time is up. But Don, go ahead, please. Go ahead.
oh no, I'm okay. I was just going to say, with the family court system, if we can find a way to affect change before we go into the courts and say work these situations out in the living room versus the courtroom, we may have some success there. Because waiting on these laws to change is like watching grass grow.
Mhm.
yeah, I agree. It's better to try to resolve these, and that's the difficult thing. Um, if you look at the case of Amber Heard and Johnny Depp, um, she's been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, and while they didn't have any children to go through this, Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt do have children, and again, Angelina Jolie has been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, which is one of the personality disorders that will drive these cases on, because people that suffer from these disorders are unreasonable, and there is no, you just can't resolve issues with them, which is why they end up in court. And the courts don't recognize this, and they believe both parties are at fault and are unable to see that one party can drive the situation to this point. And until they are able to identify these cases, they're going to handle them wrong, and they do so according to Dr. Stephen Miller, who said courts make wrong decisions 95% of the time in high conflict divorces. 95.
Yeah,
Now that's not all
yeah,
divorces. These are just the divorces that are high conflict, and they make the wrong decision because these situations are counterintuitive, and they don't understand the dynamics for which they are seen, and because of that, they make wrong decisions. And that's a high percentage, 95% of the time.
It
And we
is.
all know that once a court makes a decision, they really want to change from it because they believe they've made the right decision.
Mhm.
right.
But the thing is, even if they are wrong, they'll still stand by their wrong decision because they're just embarrassed to admit that they are wrong. Right?
And they got paid already.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They've looted the money already, so you know there's nothing to lose for them. Right?
Yeah.
But Don, thank you so much for your time. Tonight. Um, we really appreciate having you on, and
Ben and Bill, it was great talking with you guys. Thanks for having me on. Please don't forget to share the news about National Fatherless Children's Day, the fourth Sunday in June each calendar year for the rest of our lives, to bring more awareness and support to the fatherless epidemic. And as a support group, Fatherless Anonymous, every week I'm there dedicating my time in case there's fathers that need some coping skills or anything that I can do to help.
right.
I'd like to say thank you for taking your time and being so open about your history and your
Yeah,
background, and thank you for sharing. Really
yeah,
appreciate that.
yeah,
Thank you for allowing me to be honest with you guys. Our world needs honesty and
yeah,
people that
Yeah,
hold themselves accountable
yeah.
and use your energy for the right purpose.
That's right. That's right. Well, thank you so much, and thanks to our audience as well for joining us tonight. Again, we are back next Sunday, but we'll be coming live to you with the parental alienation flag raising in the Brampton City Hall. We will try the best that we can to bring it live to you on Tuesday at 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time. So join us again on Tuesday, but we will do the best to come live with the flag raising on Tuesday. Again, thank you for your time tonight, and see you again this coming
Real
weekend.
soon.
All right. So don't just stay with us for a few minutes.